This is a clip from our Patreon exclusive show, The Pre-Match Pack, a comprehensive breakdown of West Ham's upcoming opponents using our data and video analysis. The full episode, along with many other amazing shows, are available right now on patreon.com/analyticsunited. The link is in the description below, and remember, the first 7 days is always free. One quick note before we start, Jack did have big technical difficulties during the recording, so we've had to use his webcam audio instead of the usual crisp, clean microphone that you hear on all of the other videos on this channel. I have, however, cleaned it up as best I can. So enjoy the video.
We talk about lack of innovation at West Ham on many levels. Bournemouth are the opposite under Iraola, doing things differently, doing new things, causing different problems to teams and upsetting the natural order in the division. And we're starting on set of possession where immediately, and I'm stealing a bit of your flow here, but immediately it jumps out, and as it should to everyone really, the massive difference between the short pass frequency and the long pass frequency. If you didn't know, and I'm sure everyone does by this point, Bournemouth are considered quite an attractive team, but they do punt it, don't they?
Yeah. I would say that the best word or the kindest word might be one of the more pragmatic teams in the league. I think that's, the de facto word that everyone now uses to basically say, oh yeah, they go a little bit direct. But yeah, they have midfielders that you maybe describe as a little bit more functional than ball comfortable, and instead centre-backs that are actually possess quite good passing ranges. And therefore, you certainly wouldn't associate Bournemouth with like a short associative play style, at least in their most repeatable patterns. That doesn't mean that sometimes there aren't examples of that. And like we were just saying, this page probably captures the best and gives us some data to keep in mind as we go through some of the more tactical stuff and the rest of the workbook about really what kind of things define Bournemouth. And I think the first thing that really gives us a level of definition is that out of the 44% total possession they have on average in a game, only 29.8% of their total possession comes in their own third, and that's the fourth lowest proportion in the league. And the only teams that are lower than them are Spurs, Arsenal, and City, teams that you'd kind of expect to be spending a lot of time in the opposition's third, and therefore less time in their third. And although Bournemouth are in that group, that's maybe where the similarities sort of end with those teams, as those teams are kind of noted for how incisive they are with their progression, whereas Bournemouth are progressive, but it's certainly a lot more direct. And we've kind of talked about it already with the pass lengths and the disparity between them. One of the lowest in the league for short passes or short pass frequency, one of the highest in the league for long pass frequency. And you just look at the teams with similar patterns: Everton, Forest, Bournemouth, Brentford, and obviously Bournemouth as well fit into that category in terms of being more than happy to go direct. And then if we look on the right of the page as well, and we look at the Bournemouth squad, the three centre-backs who have at different points been a part of their centre-back pairing all way out ahead for long passes attempted, with Kirkes, the left back, being the most common regular starter in terms of volume of short passes. So with all that kind of data in combination, the defensive touch proportions, the pass type proportions, and then who is playing the long passes, you can kind of get a sense of what Bournemouth are trying to do stylistically. There's a lot of longer balls coming from the back.
Yeah, I do think if Sam Allardyce were serious about being Sam Allardyce, he should be talking ad nauseum about Andoni Iraola, because this seems like the most natural step of development for Sam Allardyce's ideas since Sam Allardyce.
100%, yeah.
I don't know. When you see approaches like Iraola, it does remind you, as much as football can get into these points where it feels really stagnant and it feels like everyone's doing the same thing and probably everyone's chasing Pep or a Conte or whoever, one of these sort of totemic coaches at one of the really big clubs. It does remind you the value, I think, in stepping back, zooming out, and starting right from the start all over again. I think this is probably one of the best examples around in the last 5 years of a manager at the top level, obviously with Iraola beforehand, who has stepped back, all the way back, out of the week-to-week processes, I think, and just gone, what are the most important things that a football team needs to do to be effective, and how can we do that in a way that upsets what everyone else is doing? right to the first questions, rather than starting as we tend to do once we're kind of in the rigmarole, in the week to week of kind of elite level football at kind of step 10 or step 12 or step 15, and skip out all those like first 10 steps because it's all presumptive, mate. It's like everyone's doing this, so we'll do that. This is a great example of a coach who I think has just come from a different angle and is doing something that has so often been looked at as really kind of brutish and uncomplicated and not particularly useful, but is developing on that rather than just kind of recoiling at that and then looking at kind of the innovation within the set model, which, I think is really exciting for football in general, because we are at a point 3-box-3 and who can do it the best and who has the best profiles 4-4-2, because it's the only real way to effectively defend against that. And then it comes down to how can you coach the margins? Can you be really good at set pieces? Look, Arteta, it's like it comes down to these really kind of minute differences between the teams. So it does fill me with joy to be able to come into this process 1 week in the season or 2 weeks in the season. Thankfully, we've even had 3 because we played in the cup. And talk about a team doing things completely differently, but also doing new things, not doing it in the way that, and this is not to be disparaging about someone like Sean Dyche, but not doing it in that very kind of drag and drop, we know what we're doing and we've seen this before kind of way. Just some slight differences that are definitely helping them be more effective, which actually I think is a nice segue because you can talk about those differences here.
Yes, yeah. Well, so tactically, Bournemouth, what they really want to do in deeper areas from goal kicks, for example, is maintain a really nice, safe base. So in the top right there, you can see you've got the centre backs nice and deep, sort of half split by the goalkeeper, but it's not an aggressive split like you'll see with some teams. The pivot also nice and deep, keeping the distances short. And then the fullbacks are also in very reserved positions as well, I'd say. At least at this point in Bournemouth possession, the fullbacks will both be in very reserved positions, not pushing on too much at all. And in the deeper areas of the pitch, using these 7 players if you include the goalkeeper, they'll retain the ball. They'll retain the ball at times. But really what's most important is the function of that retention. And what I think the function of that retention really is not to create scenarios where they can kind of work it into midfield and play through the thirds that way, but instead kind of encourage the opposition pressing shape, particularly the opposition midfield line, to increase the gap between themselves, the midfield line, and their own defence. And that's kind of what we're looking at on the bottom left tack board. And then when that situation does arise, they can then look to fire long balls into the channel where someone like Semenyo, for example, is really effective as an outlet, super strong, can take the ball on the chest, win aerial duels, can bring it down into feet. And then also someone like Evanilson as well, who's a new signing this season, has the kind of speed and awareness to allow, especially in transition situations, allow a defender to square off to kind of deal with a lower clearance and then run across them when they're unaware, nick the ball in front of them, and then look to spring transitions from there. And whilst he might have been a slight downgrade physically from Solanke, I think Bournemouth, by doing things like that, clearing the ball a little bit lower, have adapted well into how to feed him into, at least as a transitional outlet. But also he's quite good at the kind of link up stuff that you associate with Solanke as well. So yeah, I think that move has been pretty smooth and nice for them, and we'll come on to Evanilson a little bit later as we go through this. But yeah, this approach of moving the ball forward from the back with longer balls after kind of retaining it for a little bit, it shows up in the data as well as 7th highest volume of progressive passes played, but first of all Premier League teams for progressive directness, almost 10% of their passes are progressive. So super direct, functional way of progressing the ball. And when it does come off, Bournemouth can quite quickly end up in the final third from their own third. And when they get there, one of the major things that they'll look to make use of are like winger fullback combinations to at some point end up delivering either like a low driven cross across the box, aerial crosses into the box, or create opportunities where Semenyo can get the ball to feet, look to square up his man, and someone like Kirkes, if Semenyo is playing on the left, can make an overlapping run and give Semenyo the chance to kind of just have a 1v1, not get doubled up on. And what that means is that overwhelmingly the attacks are funneled down the two wings. And the opposite fullback will come across and tuck in. Usually that's Adam Smith on the right. And we're referring to the bottom right tack board at the minute, by the way. So you end up creating that nice 3-2-5 shape. And and you get a very simple rest defense because the pivot players don't really crash the box. They tend to sit around the edge of the box. So yeah, you get this nice rest defense base. You can allow your ball to feet winger Semenyo to take players on. You can allow your more cross heavy winger, someone like Tavernier, for example, to get crosses in. Still have the ability to defend that if it comes back at you because you've created a nice rest defense shape. So on the whole, extremely pragmatic and functional way to attacking, and what it does more than anything is limit the number of mistakes that they make, but still allow them to create lots of chances, which the opposite of that might remind you of a certain other team in the Premier League that might be facing Bournemouth soon.
Yeah, the opposite in a lot of ways, right? Not just in terms of how we create chances, but the rest defense stuff that you were just speaking about. Exactly. All of this stuff is kind of exactly the inverse of what we've tried to adopt this season.
Exactly, and I guess where Bournemouth are helped as well is that even though they're doing something that's maybe a little bit pragmatic, they've got real good quality in players like Evan Nilsson and Semenyo in terms of functioning in a direct system or as outlets for more direct passes. Like I was saying, Semenyo is a lot more of a ball to feet take on winger, whereas Tavernier is a little bit more of a cross delivery winger, and both actually constantly swap sides to ask the fullbacks different questions throughout a match, and then those pieces of quality really allow it to work consistently. And I think and this was kind of what you were just discussing as well, with how the Premier League seems to be sort of trending this season with slightly more pragmatic teams like Fulham, Forest, and then also Bournemouth, obviously all having very successful seasons thus far. Bournemouth in particular in that group have created an abundance of chances in this early period of the season, are going really well, and it might be that Bournemouth have kind of, I don't want to say struck gold, but they're in a really good place in terms of how they're playing for how the league is set up at the minute.